I'm 44 years old. I retired in 2020 and I make $104,000 a year. And guess what? It's not enough money. Hey everybody, my name is Wayne Nichols and thank you for tuning in to my first ever YouTube video. I am ecstatic to be able to share my journey and really keep a YouTube journal of my progress. And so hopefully you find interest in how I got here, where I'm going, and things that I've learned. But first, a brief introduction about myself. As I mentioned, my name is Wayne Nichols and I live in Henderson, Nevada. I've lived in the Las Vegas area probably since the mid-80s. Now I retired in 2020, notice the air quotes. We'll talk about that in a little bit. I retired from law enforcement in 2020, and I gotta tell you, it's one of the best or biggest achievements I've ever achieved in my life, and I'm very, very proud of that status. But I'll tell you, along the way, since retiring in 2020, I've really learned that I missed out on a lot of opportunities, specifically investing. So today I'm focused on building generational wealth, a lot more different than what I'm currently receiving in the form of retirement income. And again, with the goal, correcting the mistakes of my past. So talking about my journey, although I retired in 2020, I only purchased my first stock in 2021. I'm actually embarrassed by that. Again, I'm 44 years old and I purchased my first stock only just last year. And so it really comes down to a lack of education. That's why I'm excited to create these videos. I follow a lot of YouTubers that are out there, and I am beyond impressed, right? These are guys that are in their early 20s, sometimes even younger, and they really have figured out the way to build wealth is starting sooner than later, and that's something that I did not do. So we're going to talk about that perspective that I have as somebody who's in their mid-40s. So thank goodness for YouTube and curiosity, because when I began investing, I didn't quite know what I should be investing in. I didn't quite know stocks, and so that's really been great for me, and I'm sure you found this video the same way. The biggest thing for me is I want my kids to succeed where I failed. That's really the motivation behind these videos. And so if you find value, great. Give it the old coveted thumbs up. You can follow along on my journey, because there is going to be a lot of content coming your way in 2023. So as I mentioned, I retired in 2020. I make $104,000 a year. I'm very proud of that number. I get that in perpetuity, so it does not decrease. It only increases, believe it or not, in time, because there are some cost of living increases that I will start receiving in 2023. But the biggest disadvantage is it does not carry over to my kids. I love both of my kids dearly. And so as I, began to ponder, like, how can I help them create wealth and understand savings, I realized that I dropped the ball in the sense that I was so focused on the retirement income aspect that I didn't really keep in mind other considerations. And so $104,000 a year, I'm not going to sell it to you that you couldn't survive on $100,000+ a year. I thought I would definitely be living a lot more comfortably. But what I did not consider, and this is where I kind of bring perspective, so for those of you that are working on achieving retirement, these are some considerations that you have to keep in mind. And the biggest one is taxes. Holy smokes, I pay a lot in taxes. These videos, by the way, are going to be completely, I'm going to be transparent. I'm going to show you dollar amounts. I'm going to talk about, where I've gone wrong. But at the end of the day, I pay a lot of money in taxes. And there's no doubt that you pay a lot in taxes as well. So that has to be a consideration as you approach retirement. Healthcare. I don't want this to be a boring video about healthcare. When I was in my 20s, I probably didn't even give it a second thought. But now that I am retired, and now that I have to think about paying for healthcare, it is an astronomical monthly figure that, I think for me to take advantage of my healthcare retirement through my previous employer, it's about $1,500 a month. Luckily, I'm not paying that. We're going to talk about why. Bills. You may not have a car payment, you may not have a mortgage payment, but you've got bills, and you're always going to have bills. And it seems like every year, for me, I've been keeping track of all of my expenses. It continues to go up. Whether it's your utility bills, whether it's your streaming platforms, everything seems to continue to go up and rise in cost. And of course, we have inflation as well. So groceries, insurance, taxes, all those things. But the biggest reason I think you should begin exploring multiple streams of income is your lifestyle. Nobody wants to be retired and then say things like, well, I can't do this anymore, or I can't travel as much as I'd like. And so hands down, I would say taxes is the big one, but lifestyle, that made it very clear to me that, $100,000 a year, it's a lot of money. But for me, I want to be able to travel. I want to be able to help my kids as they think about going to college, maybe getting set up with it could be their first apartment, their first home. So that's what these videos are going to really do, is sort of maintain that focus. And again, I have gone back to work full time. I don't want to make it sound like, oh, poor me, I had to go back to work full time. I couldn't hack it with my pension. No, it was always the plan. It was the plan to retire early and then pursue another profession, something that I'm more passionate about. I can make decent money. And so I have gone back to work full time. And one of the greatest things about going back to work full time is I get to start over doing everything the right way. And what I mean by that is, even though I was able to retire in 2020, there's a lot of things that I did not do along the way. And taking advantage of pre-tax contributions, hands down, is one of those regrets that I have. I wish I had started sooner, and I wish when I did contribute, I was more aggressive and pushed the limits, because I really, really missed out on those pre-tax contributions. So those are the 2023 goals. Generational wealth, right? That's kind of the umbrella of what my YouTube channel is going to focus on. I'm working on, by the way, a snazzy name. I haven't quite decided on what I want to call this channel. And the reason being is I don't really necessarily fit into one category. A lot of the great YouTubers that I follow, they're focused on dividend stocks. I don't know that I am exclusively focusing in on dividend stocks, so we're going to talk about that. But I am going to talk about dividend stocks, taking advantage of tax-deferred contributions. That's a big one, right? Dollar cost averaging is just a way of life. And if you follow any YouTuber, they're going to tell you, if you are not dollar cost averaging, you're missing out. And that is something that I have learned in the last year. It is so important. And I'm going to show you here my portfolios, and a lot of my success has to do with dollar cost averaging. I do sell covered calls to generate extra income. It's not for everybody. And for me, I have learned some very expensive lessons in 2022. So we're going to talk about that. Again, going along the way of transparency. You get the good, you get the bad, you get the ugly. You're going to see it all. And 2022 was definitely a roller coaster year for me when it comes to selling options. And then the big one you're going to hear me talk about throughout the theme of these upcoming YouTube videos is setting reasonable goals, right? My saying is small goals, big victories. I knew that I wanted to retire from law enforcement as soon as I could. But along the way, I had set reasonable goals, right? So, paying down my credit cards, paying off my mortgage, working on, having reasonable bills to focus on, and not just, making crazy purchases. So anytime I talk to my friends or, I'm talking to my kids, you'll hear me say small goals, big victories. And I love this in the area of tracking your dividend progress. Everybody wants to retire off of their dividends. Everybody wants to make, $50,000 to $100,000. But if you set small goals, let's say, your first goal is you want to be able to collect $100 a year in dividend stocks, right? That's a small goal, but a big victory. And so that is something that we'll be talking in future videos as well. So let me give a shout out here before we transition to my portfolios. Listen, again, it goes back to, man, I wish I had these guys' knowledge and mindset when I was their age. And so first I got to give a shout out to my friend Ryne Williams, who's, by the way, lives in the Las Vegas area. Now, I actually reached out to him when I found out he lived in the Las Vegas area. And we're talking about a super dialed in guy who absolutely is just dialed in when it comes to, that goal of living off of his dividend stocks, right? He's working on building that wealth, and his channel is fantastic. And so, listen, if you're watching my video and you're like, listen, if these guys are so good, why don't I go follow them? You should, right? You should absolutely. I do. And these guys have taught me so much. Brad Finn is another one I got to give a shout out. He really focuses on dividend investing, futures day trading, and option strategies. And although I don't do anything with futures day trading, I do a lot with options, and Brad Finn pretty much, in my opinion, wrote the book making it easier for guys like me that didn't, even begin investing until 2021. He's made it so easy for me to follow along, and I've had great success, and so I got to give a shout out to him. And the average Joe investor, who talks about index funds, dividend stocks, and cash flow, which is really, I think, important, especially as we go into 2023. All right, let's go ahead and transition over to my brokerage accounts. Before we do so, I do want to point out you're going to likely see a significant amount in my Robinhood account. And I don't want you to think that, this amount, just built from scratch. I think I mentioned earlier that my first ever stock I purchased was in January. You can see right here, January 18th of 2021. It's not as though I bought my first stock and then, I was able to build this up just by steady daily cost averaging. No, that's not the case. And so in 2022, I had a pretty fantastic real estate transaction take place. We're going to talk about that in a future video, but essentially that allowed me to invest a very significant portion into my Robinhood brokerage account. I got very lucky. So we'll talk about that transaction because it didn't just go from 0 to 472,000 in just under 2 years without something significant. And in fact, it was a real estate transaction. So we'll talk about that. Very, very excited about that. It really, I'm just excited to share those details. So stay tuned on that. But notice, even though there is a significant chunk of cash in there, I'm still down, right? In totality, I'm down about 13%. That's a very large amount of money. We're going to talk about some goals that I have in 2023 to offset that 70 plus thousand. Now you're saying, well, Wayne, how are you going to offset 70,000? You can't time the market. Well, what I mean by that is I am also focusing in on selling covered calls. And we'll talk about my journey with selling cash secured puts. Again, the good, the bad, the ugly, and what I'm doing with a lot of these stocks that I own that I'm in the red. And so that's the nice thing about selling covered calls. It does help build or generate cash flow while I wait for the market to rebound on a couple of key positions. The other position I want to talk about is my M1 Finance. Just like dividend stocks, it seems like if you don't have an M1 Finance account, you are missing out. And I just opened up my M1 account. Let's take a look here. Looks like August of this year. You can see here I started with $100. And I've been able to grow this pretty aggressively. I'm up to just under 7,000. Daily cost averaging has really been how I have been able to aggressively grow this portfolio. And so we're going to talk about that. I'm also excited to say that I am going to be transitioning a very large portion of my Robinhood stock balances. I'm pushing them over to my M1 portfolio. If you know anything about M1, you know how the balancing is really the secret sauce with building your long-term growth and your dividend income. And so I am excited. I just initiated that transfer. So hopefully in a couple of days, you will see how much I pushed over from my Robinhood account to my M1 Finance. I didn't push over everything, and that's because I still intend to keep my Robinhood account. I do really appreciate Robinhood for selling options. And so again, that's going to be in a future video, so stay tuned on that. And the last thing I want to kind of close out with is my current dividends for 2022. Listen, if you're not keeping track of your dividend progress, or any progress for that matter, this to me, right, when I look back on 2022, right, and you're like, holy heck, Wayne, you're down, right, 70 plus thousand in one brokerage account alone. You're right. But I don't really dwell on that number. And the reason I'm able to do that with a smile is because I am also laser focused on dividends. And you can see here, my very first dividend that I received in Robinhood was for 48 cents in February of 2021. And take a look, a year later, 2022, I have been, obviously breaking records for every month that I previously earned in 2021. And you can see here, $1,300 is about what I made in 2021. 2022, it's going to be obviously an all-time record for me. I'm closing in on just about $8,800. We have a few more days left in 2022, so that number might go up just a little bit more. And I am absolutely laser focused on beating all of these months in 2023. So I'll be sharing that progress. Guys, I'm really excited. And once again, I want to thank you for tuning in. If the video went a little bit long, I think it's because I had to knock out a decent introduction of myself. And the next video, we're going to be more focused on diving into my Robinhood and/or M1. We'll be looking at dividend income, talking about options income, and hopefully some good things are in store. So once again, thanks for tuning in. We'll see you on the next one.